So the number one issue I hear you guys have is you'll get stuck and don't know how to turn your loop into a track. So you might have one or two 8-bar loops and everything's grooving, everything's driving, and it sounds really great, but you don't know where to take it, or you're stuck, or you just don't understand how to evolve that idea. And that's because you guys aren't following a structure. And when you're making trance music, trance is a lot more structured than some other genres. Some other genres might be a little bit more freeform, but it's not just trance that's structured. A lot of storytelling is structured to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And right here on the screen, you can see a trance production. And here you can see a clear beginning. And right here, you can see a middle part, which is sort of a different shape and pattern. And then here we have the ending. And this even follows sort of an A, B, A pattern, which you might hear people talk about in classical music. So I want to highlight that structure is not rules. Structure is direction. And structure sort of tells you what comes next. Somebody had a good question. They said they don't understand the purpose of each part of a track. And really, the purpose of each part is to take us to the next part. In a way, when we start a piece of music, we're always trying to get to the end, right? But it's not just about starting and ending. It's also about everything that comes in between. It's about enjoying the piece of music as well at each moment in between. So think about a movie. We don't just start a movie and want it to end unless it's really bad. But a good movie has a lot of small parts in between. And once we understand this sort of idea, or start paying attention more to the stories that we tell and read and see, we can apply that to our music. So a lot of producers think of trance as a good book or a good story. And each track is a story with an intro, with a building exposition, okay, with a theme, with a climax, and there's even an outro or an ending. So once you have a solid structure, decisions become much easier when to build the track up and when to release energy in the track. And following a solid structure helps us know where to place more energy in the track or to remove energy from the track. Okay. So again, humans are wired for stories. Music works the same way. Just like a movie has a beginning, a middle, and an end, a good piece of music should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Of course, you guys can break the rules, and I'm sure you can find plenty of songs out there that are just loops, and that's pretty cool too. But again, this is one way to help you guys if you ever get stuck. This is one technique you guys can use to build on your ideas and never get stuck. So if you don't know what part of the story you're in, you don't know what's going to come next. And so if you're stuck with a loop, if you have a project right now and it's just an endless loop, I want you to, you might be zoomed in right now. I want you to zoom out from that loop, and I want you to imagine where in the movie is that loop at. Is it at the intro? Do you see the loop building up from there? Or do you feel like something had to happen before you got to the loop? So when I start a new trance project, I work from a basic framework that I can follow, and that just makes sure that I never get stuck and I know exactly what part of the music is doing what. And if I'm ever guessing, that's just because I don't know where I'm at in the track. So the first thing I do is I mark out my intro, and I put down a locator and I mark intro. Okay, and I work in 8-bar loops. Okay, and so we want to mark out the first group of 4 loops, which puts us at 32 bars total. Okay, and this is our intro. The purpose of the intro is to put the listener in a setting and create an atmosphere. Okay, even if that just means having a trance beat playing and letting the listener know, hey, this is a trance track. Okay, we have a kick drum going, we have some hi-hats, we know it's at the trance tempo, which I do 140 BPM. You could do anywhere from about 130 to 140 for trance. In most professional productions, you'll notice that the sub bass doesn't enter until the 32nd bar, and we could say sub enters. And this is also our exposition. And that means that the track builds an intensity, but it isn't the most intense. So there's still room for it to build in intensity, but with the addition of that sub bass, it creates kind of a different, almost a different location too. It's like almost like a different scene. Just like a movie, the intro might take place in one scene or one setting, then the exposition might take place in another setting. So that we can again mark out another set of 32 bars. Okay. And at this point, this is our middle of the track, right? And so this is the middle of the track, and this is what we might call the theme. And this is the core sort of melodic idea of the track. And this is even where maybe the super sauce or the lead comes in. Okay? We can keep it simple, and just for this tutorial, we're going to just again mark out another group of 4 8-bar loops, which is another set of 32 bars. And we're going to add another locator, and this is going to be the climax. And this is where everything is playing. Okay? And this is sort of the most epic part of the track. This is where the lead, this is where everything comes together. This is where everything that we worked up to, all the characters that we were sort of bringing in, the lead, the instruments, the kick drum, the bass, everything that was building up comes in, and we see everything right here. And this is where the track is really driving. It's really intense. This is like the major battle scene in the movie, right? And the thing is, the movie can't just end here, right? Because we're just ending on too high of a note. We got to bring the listener back down. Okay, so here, the whole time we've kind of been climbing up in intensity, and right now we're at the climax. This is the most intense. Everything from here, we got to kind of bring it down and coast the listener to a smooth landing. And again, we can mark out another 4 bars, and we can do the recapitulation, which is a very fancy word for recap or summarize. Okay, so this is sort of where, sticking to our movie analogy, this is where we summarize sort of everything that happened. And in a trance track, this is where we sort of bring that exposition back. And this is where we sort of revisit that theme that was in the beginning of the track. And the purpose of this is to tie everything together, because this is just very human for us, is we want an ending. We want to know that this all comes full circle. Okay? And we can, again, literally grab another set of 32 bars, and we could end the track right here, and we could call this the ending. And so as we summarize the track, we're also breaking it down. Okay, And there you go, guys. That's a super basic framework that anybody can follow for a basic trance production or basic music production in general. So if you're not even going to use this for trance, you can use this for any type of music. We can have an A part, we can have an intro, we can have sort of a middle, and then we have an ending. And this isn't quite long enough for a full-length release. There are things we can do to increase the length. So we could actually do a climax part 2, which is one of my favorite ways to increase the length of a track. And so we just go here, we duplicate the time, and again 4 more bars. So what I did here was I inserted 4 more bars, and we do something called a reprise. And this is climax part 2. Reprise is a fancy word for a repeated part of music. Okay, so this is sort of a songwriting tool, if you've heard of words like bridge, chorus, verse. Trance music doesn't quite use bridges and choruses and verses. Trance is a little bit more like classical music, where we have distinct sections, and those sections serve specific purposes. And by combining this structure with pop music, say using a verse or using a chorus, we can create sort of like a pop trance or a vocal trance track. So guys, the possibilities are endless. Again, this is a basic framework that it's up to you to work from, and combine this with what you know about music. But if you're ever stuck, if you ever find yourself stuck, go back to this basic framework and figure out where are you at in the track. Are you at the intro? Are you somewhere in the middle? Are you at the climax? Are you at the drop? Are you at your resolution? And once you figure out where you're at, zoom out and try to draw the rest of the framework around the track. And again, guys, and if you're not working from a basic framework, and if you don't know how to use this, you're going to find yourself looping 8 bars over and over again and just adding more and more sounds, hoping that it's going to push your track forwards. And that's not always the answer. So now that we know the basic framework that we can work from, it's time that we actually learn what goes into here and creates the emotion in the track and actually gives this some emotion and turns it into art. See you guys in the next episode.